Morning. 150 years. You've been determined, and you're determined to go on for another 150 years and more. Now, Dr. Smith, my brother, my friend, I'm delighted and very happy and very pleased to be here this Sunday morning. Deacons, officers, mothers, ushers, all of the brothers and sisters, all of the members and visitors. I see some of my friends here, a lot of my friends from Capitol Hill, Sister Barbara Lee from Oakland, good to see you here. With the Sister Long from Maryland, Louisiana, good to see you. Young lady from Coca-Cola, Ingrid Sanders Jones. And there must be some other folks here from Atlanta, right? How many people are from Georgia? Do you have a Georgia connection? And good to see my staff here and several good friends. To see Brother Tanner and his wife here from Faith and Politics. And all of you, you just didn't have to come this morning, but you're here. So thank you for coming. But I must say, my beloved brothers and sisters of Shiloh Baptist Church, it is good to be in the house of the Lord one more time. And I must say to you that you're more than lucky. You are blessed to have a leader, to have a shepherd like Brother Dr. Pastor Smith. I'm glad to take part in this celebration, to pay tribute to this great church and its founder for a century and a half of meaningful service to the Lord and to the surrounding community of Washington, D.C. 150 years is a long time. It's a long time. But the legacy of this church, like a beacon to all who see it, majestic, steadfast, and victorious. One thing I want to set it straight, Yebby, my friend, and my brother. Yebby, where are you? Oh, okay. You know, I only paid a little money for that book. I think the young lady who sold the book to me, she didn't think it was so valuable. I gave her a $1 bill. She said, oh, it's worth 50 cents. I took the change back, my 50 cents, and I got out of there so fast. I didn't want her to change her mind. And I still have the book. Yebby told you that. And I still have the program for Shiloh Baptist Church. So there is a connection. There is a connection. Your history represents the arch of the African American story from slavery to the present day. 150 years since the Emancipation Proclamation. 50 years since the March on Washington and since Martin Luther King Jr. turned the steps of the Lincoln Memorial into a modern-day pulpit. 50 years since the children led the movement for civil rights in the streets of Birmingham. And it's been 50 years since the bombing of your sister church, your church in faith, your sister church in faith, 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. We as a people, think about it, have been here over 400 years, and some said much longer. And it seemed that God put us here to be the conscience of a nation. As Dr. King wrote, and others suggested, but a historian by the name of Arnold Toynbee, British, said it may be the Negro to take the message of peace and love and nonviolence to the Western world. When black people are truly free in America, it would mean that this nation has finally laid down the burden of race. It would mean we have set aside the lie of separation and division. It would mean we are finally living by the understanding that we are one people, one family, the human family, that we live in one nation, one house, the world house. Amen. Just think for a moment. I won't be with you long. But when the Roman soldiers were leading Jesus up the long hill to Golgotha, after they had ripped off his robe and placed a crown of thorns on his head, after they mocked him while he was carrying that old rugged cross, they met a black man on the way to the crucifixion. His name was Simon Cyrene, the father of Rufus and Alexander. And when they saw him, those Roman soldiers compelled him to carry the cross of Jesus. And we have been carrying the cross ever since. Carrying the cross of human injustice. We've been bearing the pain and indignity, demonstrating with our lives. In our bodies and our being, what must be changed in the human soul, in the human spirit. Just like a mirror that never lies, it only reflects what we do as a people. We bear our burden in the heat of the day and the black coldness of night. We have struggled, suffered, and died because of hate, because of double dealing and a double standard. My beloved brothers and sisters, it hasn't been easy. In fact, most of the time has been very hard. Life for us ain't been no crystal stair. Had tacks in it and boards torn up and placed with no carpet on the floor, as the poet Langston Hughes once wrote. But all of the time, we have been climbing and reaching, landing and turning corners, and sometimes moving into darkness where there isn't any light. We have trials and persistent tribulation, but we as a people have kept the faith. We never gave up. We never gave in. We never gave out. Through the storms and the rain, through the tornadoes and the fire, through the reconstruction and the renovation, through the crime infestation and gentrification, through it all, Shallow Baptist Church, you have kept the faith. You have been building a community. You have been building the beloved community. And I said this morning, thank you and may God bless you. You have kept holding on to God's unchanging hand. That's why you're still here. I know some people probably said, maybe we should move. Maybe we should go there. But you're still here. You're like trees planted by the rivers of water, and you shall not be moved. Our foremothers and our forefathers were slaves, kidnapped and spurred across the ocean in chains. Some of our ancestors never made it. They never made it. Many got sick and died on the way. They were thrown overboard. Some refused to be slaves and they jumped to their death. Those that stayed kept the faith. They knew they were on a long journey, slipping into darkness. But they believed that God would meet them on the other side. The founder of this church believed, you may burn our church, you may drive us out of Virginia, but we will find a place in Washington, D.C., and we did. You did it. We have suffered as a people, so much as a people. Miseducated, mistreatment, and mismanagement. Maim, lynching, and beating. We have been arrested on trumped-up charges, innocent taken to jail. We were sold on the auction block like cows, divided up like land, but we are still here. We're still here. Yes, we have been rebuked. We have been scorned. We have been talked about almost surely as you're born. We have been called everything but a child of God. If a mother could speak today, she would say President Barack Obama had been called everything but a child of God, but he's still the President of the United States. He's still the most powerful elected leader in the world, the most powerful man in the world. Why don't you help me this morning? We had to struggle to learn to read and write, struggle just to become educated. Sometimes we had to hide behind a wagon or steal away in the fields to study. And today our young people have so much during the height of the civil rights movement. I never heard about the internet, Facebook, and all of these gadgets and all of that. When we laid down to sleep at night, we had no peace. The night riders would come along and burn a cross in our yard. The old master might come and disturb the quiet of the night. For centuries, many of us live in fear because terror surrounds us everywhere, and our only justice was beyond the grave. We were afraid to look up, and we were afraid to look down, afraid to speak, and afraid to be quiet. We were afraid to be afraid. You know, you're in a bad fix when you're afraid to be afraid. But we never gave up. Never gave out. We never gave in. As a people, we kept the faith. Our brave and courageous men, black men, young, middle-aged, fought in every battle. The nation gave us so little, but if we were willing to risk everything we had in hope of gaining dignity, respect, and freedom, we were brought, we fought, we were brought, urged to fight during the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the Western expansion, in World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and we're still sacrificing today in Iraq and Afghanistan. Thank God Almighty, we have a president who found a way to avoid armed conflict in Syria. Because the hands that took care of little white babies, I saw it growing up in rural Alabama. The hands that picked cotton and pulled corn. The hand that plucked, do you call it yerba tobacco? Do you pluck it, or what do you do with crop it? Some of you must be from North Carolina, Virginia. You crop tobacco. The hands that plied the mules, those hands and their children's hands helped pick the president of the United States, not just once, but twice. There must be a God. There must be a God. The founder of this church believed in God Almighty. And you cannot lose faith now. We were fighting for democracy abroad and would not find it here in home when they came back. We came back from World War II, and German prisoners were treated better than the Tuskegee Airmen and the black soldiers who rescued people from the death camps. They would not even be allowed to be buried in the same cemetery as whites. Places in the Deep South, the cemetery, even in death, people were segregated. We had to change that. But through it all, we as a people never became bitter. We never became hostile. We never lost our sense of dignity and pride. We kept coming. Brave and courageous, we found a way to get in the way and make a way out of no way. Yeah. We took the church, the holy place, as a refuge. Our congregation supported our development in every way. The church was a light on the Underground Railroad. It was the liberator of the mind, the teacher of the unlearned, and the relief of the burden of the soul. It was the builders of leaders and sustained an entire community. So thank you, Shiloh. In the church, we found friendship in a hostile environment, comfort, warm support. We joined the usher board, the choir. Thank you for your beautiful music. Can you see your sisters and brothers 150 years ago singing the songs of Zion, singing Still Away? Could you just listen to them saying, well, you know, there must be a God somewhere. If he delivered Daniel, you know, he's going to deliver us. If he delivered the 3 Hebrew boys, he's going to deliver us. So we can't give up. If he delivered Paul and Silas bound in jail, he can deliver us. They didn't give up. You know, there's something that is burning in us. We learned to survive. We kept praying for a miracle. We kept working toward transformation, and change did come. Organizations sprang up like the NAACP and the Urban League. Figures appeared like Frederick Douglass, Mary Clyde Bethune, Ida B. Wells, George Washington Carver, W. E. Du Bois, and Booker T. Washington. Shiloh Baptist sprung up first, as I said earlier, in Virginia, with a congregation of just 750 mostly slaves. In 1862, you know your history, about 400 moved here. When African Americans heard about what happened to this church, they knew that people were searching for a better life. And your membership grew, and it continued to grow. You grew, you came here, and you have been prosperous, and eventually you decided to move to this location on Peach Street. First, I think you were on 16th and 7th Street, right? Oh, any of you old enough to remember that? That was a long time ago. There was a lot of fanfare when you moved here, when you decided to build on this corner. It was reported in the newspaper, but arson set this great church back, and the dream crumbled into ashes, right? Am I telling this story? But Shiloh never gave up. You never gave out, you never gave in. You kept the faith, and you were able to build this church majestic, steadfast, and victorious. I don't know how, but somehow, in some way, we as a people have been able to use what we have. We were able to make do. We were able to get by. We used our God-given talent and ability to stay in the struggle to create and give birth to mighty people. Knowledge was kept from us, but we were able to build great institutions of higher learning, Howard University here in Washington, Tougaloo College in Mississippi, Fisk University in Tennessee, or Morehouse or Spelman College in Atlanta. In spite of it all, as a people during the past 150 years, we've been able, yes, to move ahead. We prayed the prayers of our mothers and fathers. We have always believed as a people that somehow, in some way, we would overcome. So that's why today we sing over and over again, we shall overcome. We believe it deep down in our hearts. And that's why we said, there's no way tied. We're going on to see what the end is going to be. I remember when I was a little child, my father was a sharecropper in Alabama, about 50 miles south of Montgomery, making about $3 a week. Somehow, in some way, with a family of 10 children. I never figured it out. How, but he was able to save $300. When I was 4 years old, he bought 110 acres of land. The land is still in our family today. I used to argue and argue. I guess I was born to protest. But I used to argue with my mother and father when I was 5 or 6. Out there picking cotton in that hot sun. I would say, Mama, this work is going to kill me. And she would say, son, hard work never kill anybody. And I would say, well, it's about to kill me. And I just believe if I could just get to the end of the road, if I could just get a good education, somehow, in some way, there was a better way of life. Somebody, I don't know who, but somebody drilled in me and in us that if you work hard, if you have faith, Get a good education, you can overcome. Somebody prayed for me. Somebody prayed for Shiloh Baptist Church. This is not a time to stop. This is not a time to give up. This is not a time to throw in the towel. We must run on. We have to teach our children. Teach our children not to be ashamed to work hard. They think it is money that make the difference. Yeah, a little money is okay. They think it's image that make the difference. They think that nice clothes and a fancy car, maybe a degree from Harvard, maybe from Yale or some other school, maybe a pretty face, a big fine house is what make the difference. Now don't get me wrong. These things can help out, but history shows us they're not the key. How do we know that? I could call on some witness, because the 21 founders of Shiloh Baptist Church didn't have much money. They didn't have a position. They weren't elected to any office. They got on their knees and they prayed. They had faith. They came together. And that's what we must do. I was looking at some of when you get arrested. None of you been arrested. You don't know what I'm talking about. But sometimes when you get arrested, at least in Nashville, Brother Pastor, when people get arrested during the sit-ins or the stand-in, they take your belt. They take your money and they put it in a large brown bag or envelope so you will have what you brought in. And I was looking at some that I saved, and they took your ring. And on occasion I noticed I only had $1, $5. If they had tried to serve me, I wouldn't have been able to pay for the meal. But we had something else. We had faith. We had hope. We had love. That somehow and some way, if we believe that we can bring down those signs that say white and colored, white men, white women, colored men, that we will win. And we won. The signs are gone, and they will not return. The only places our children will see those signs will be in a book, in a museum, or on a video. They're gone, and they will not return. We must use what we have. You know, the people a few years ago believed that his justice, the justice of God Almighty, was needed. They believed that one day every knee would bow and every tongue would confess that Jesus is Lord. Not Harvard, not Neiman Marcus, not Nordstrom, not Potomac or Woodmore, not Sidwell Friends or St. Albans, but Jesus is Lord. And we must never forget it. They believe in the power of prayer. The power of the righteous would never be forsaken. I used to hear my mother sing while she was cooking a meal. The righteous would never be forsaken. And I believe that today. So I said, stay with this church. Stay with Shiloh. I got arrested 40 times during the 60s, beaten and left bloody, left unconscious at the Greyhound bus station in Montgomery on May 20, 1960. Had a concussion on that bridge in Selma, but somehow the Lord kept me. Because somebody prayed for me. The Lord kept me because somebody prayed for me. some mother, some father, some minister prayed for me. So I said to you today, as you celebrate and commemorate 150 years, we need to search the story of our ancestors, like the founders of this church, to find out how they did more with less than we have today, and how they turned their trials, their tribulation into liberation of a people and an entire nation. Thank you, Shiloh Baptist Church, on 150 powerful years of service. Go out and share your story. Tell your story. Don't be ashamed. Don't hide your life. Don't hide your lamp in the bushes.
Yeah.
Tell your story. That is our calling. That is our mission. Tell your story. And God Almighty will be pleased. And history will be pleased. Thank you very much, and may God bless you, and peace be with you.
Nora, let me come in. The doors are fastened and the windows spin. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on, hold on. Nora said you done lost your track. You can't plow straight and keep a looking back. Keep your hand on